When you learn chords, and especially when we're talking about jazz chords with lots of variations and options, then it is extremely important that you learn them in the right order, that you build a foundation that can really tie everything together, that you can sort of connect everything else to. So in this video, I'm going to take a simple set of chord voicings for a minor 2-5-1, probably chords you already know, and then I'm going to go over a step-by-step process and show you how you can open that up and turn that into a vocabulary of voicings that you can use for comping, improvising and chord soloing. In this video we're also going to get you away from just playing grips, because jazz is just not campfire chords, even if Brad Meldau covered Wonderwall. My name is Jens Larsen, learn jazz, make music. You probably already know some basic jazz chords, so you can play a minor 2-5-1 using this slightly awkward 2 chord like this. The great thing about playing chords in this way is of course that you get a complete picture of the harmony. So you can really hear the bass note and the rest of the chord. You have all the notes in there. You can also hear how the bass is moving. And in that way you really get the chord progression into your ear and into your system. And if you are a little bit familiar with playing chords like this where you have the full voicing, then make sure to also check out how to use them as 2 layers, so that you have one part of the chord that's the bass, that's 1 layer, and then the rest of the chord. Because in that way you can play a much more interesting comp, something that works really well, especially for duo settings. And one way to think about this is how drummers will use the bass drum and the snare drum in swing grooves to really accentuate different things, play rhythms and interact with the soloist. And actually if you're comping, that's also what you want to log in with. The basic chords are great for getting the basic harmony into your ears. But if you're playing in a band, then usually it's better to just leave out those notes so you don't get exposed to angry bass players. While I may be using Dave Holland to joke around a bit in this video, then actually this band, which is the Dave Holland Quintet, is one of my all-time favorite bands. And if you want to check out a really great concert, then I'm linking to this complete concert that I got the video from in the description of this video. Creating rootless versions of the basic chords is really simple because we just leave out the lowest note. And essentially that means that you're being paid more to play less. Who wouldn't want to do that? When you play the chords like this, then you have a lot more freedom to change things within the chords, change the notes, add interesting melodies and voice movement, and you're getting away from just playing a static grip that you can't really do anything with. So we're moving away from just having one way of doing this into a place where we can really start doing something and improvising with the chords. And the first thing to check out with that is probably to change the melody. That could be something like this. It's quite easy to change the melody and make it more interesting in that way. But of course, if you really want to use this, then you also want to add some more interesting rhythms, because this previous example swings like a Gregorian chant. And here you can hear how I'm improvising both with the melody and also just adding some more interesting rhythms. And there is a lot more happening than example 2, where we're just playing the static grips in a 2-layer comping. And this is really opening up for a lot of things, and we can actually take it a lot further by starting to add more notes to the chords and really use the freedom that we now have. In this video I started with 4-note chords, and then I took away the bass note to create some 3-note chords, because that's much more flexible. And now we can add in that 4th note again, but not as a bass note, but just as more options when it comes to having a top note melody, and in that way a little bit more color also. When you check this out, you can check out all the options. I think that's of course always good to just be aware of what is possible, but at the same time when you start working with this, and especially when it comes to comping, I think it's more useful to really just take the things that are easy to play and then be creative with fewer options. And the reason for that is that when you're comping, then you also have a function in the band. You can not only think about what you're doing, you also have to focus on and have one ear in what the band and what the soloist is doing, because otherwise you're not really comping. So it's a lot better to just take a few options that are easy to play and then practice being creative with that. If we look at what's possible for the B half diminished, then we have and here, of course, sometimes I'm only playing 3 notes and I'm also just starting with 2 notes, or really kind of reducing the amount of notes. But that's of course just because I want to have some freedom so that I can play more different melodies. And playing fewer notes is definitely an easier option to work with. Actually, this aspect of being practical and then focusing on the things that you can actually make music with and not trying to learn all the options is really something that goes for most things that you want to learn when it comes to music. That's also why I keep talking about learning songs rather than just trying to learn all the drop 2 voicings or all the scales and all the arpeggios. The same type of overview for an E7 would be something like this. So here I'm really using the E7 altered scale, and that means that I also get the flat 5 and the flat 13 in there. For the A minor 6 we have this. The way I use the material from these exercises is really just to pick out the things that I find really easy to play and also kind of easy to work with, that I can hear melodies with, and then try to use that. I don't want you to get lost in just practicing all the options, because likely you're never going to be using all of them. Take the things that are just adding on stuff you already know and that you immediately can hear something with and can immediately play, and then use that. That's much more efficient. If you use these voicings, then you could create something like this. If you want to see this type of thinking applied to a song, and then also starting from drop 2 voicings, which is another type of voicing that you definitely want to be familiar with if you want to play jazz, then check out this video where I'm going over a Satin doll and going over different ways that you can embellish the drop 2 voicings, change the melody, make the rhythms interesting, and add some interesting different chromatic passing chords.